Hi students, next chapter is Evolution Part 1. So, today we will study about evolution. So, any guess what is evolution? See, evolution is the change over time in one or more inherited traits found in populations of individuals. Inherited traits are distinguishing characteristics, for example, anatomical, biochemical, or behavioral, that are passed on from one generation to the next. So, evolution requires variation of inherited traits within a population. So, let's go on. In evolution, first comes origin of life. Have you ever thought what is the origin of yourself? What is the origin of animals? How we came in this earth? How the earth exists? From where earth has come? All these questions. See, science shows us that universe evolved by self-organization of matter towards more and more complex structures. Atoms, stars and galaxies self-assembled out of the fundamental particle produced by the Big Bang. What is the Big Bang? Big Bang is a theory. It is often described with something like the universe came into being due to the explosion of a point in which all matter was concentrated. See, the cell theory states that all the cells arise from the pre-existing cells. But if that is the case, so how did the first living cell come about? In other words, how did the first living cell or life originate? Matter of concern. So, there are some points. First, to qualify as a living cell, it would have to grow and reproduce. And since this cell was the first living thing, it had to come from non-living materials. But how it's possible? See, in first generation, stars, heavier elements like carbon, nitrogen and oxygen were formed. Aging first generation stars then expelled them out into space. We, who consist of these elements, are thus literally born from stardust. The heaviest elements were born in the explosion of supernova. The forces of gravity subsequently allowed for the formation of newer stars and of planets. Finally, in the process of biological evolution from bacteria like tiny cells to all life on Earth, including us, humans, complex life forms arose from simpler ones. So, there are some theories on the origin of life. Many scientists came in this field and they put some theories to clarify the confusion of origin of life. Till date, nobody knows the exact point how life came in being. But some scientists tried to put some theories to clarify the origination of life. First theory is catastrophism. This theory is simply a modification of the theory of spatial creation. It states that there have been several creations of life by God, each preceded by a catastrophe resulting from some kind of geological disturbance. According to this, since each catastrophe completely destroyed the existing life, each new creation consisted of life different from that of previous ones, and this theory was given by Cuvier. Next theory is biopoiesis or theory of abiogenesis. In natural science, biopoiesis is the study of how biological life arises from these inorganic matter through natural processes and the method by which life on earth arose. Next theory is theory of biogenesis. This theory was independently proved by Reddy's experiment, by Spelling-Jones experiment and by Pasteur experiment. First of all, Reddy's experiment. In 1968, Francisco Reddy designed a scientific experiment to test the spontaneous creation of maggots by placing fresh meat in each of two different jars. One jar was left open and the others were covered with a cloth. Days later, the open jar contained maggots, whereas the covered jars contained no maggots. He did note that maggots were found on the exterior surface of the cloth that covered the jar. Reddy successfully demonstrated that the maggots came from fly eggs and thereby helped to disprove spontaneous generation, or so he thought. Next experiment is of Spellingeri's experiment. Leggero Spellingeri, it is also an Italian scientist, reviewed Reddy's experimental design. He constructed his own experiment by placing broth in each of two separate bottles, boiling the broth in broth bottles, then sealing one bottle and leaving the other open. Days later, the unsealed bottle was teeming with small living. The unsealed bottle was teeming with small living things that he could observe more clearly with the newly invented microscope. The sealed bottle showed no signs of life. This is sealed bottle. This certainly excluded spontaneous generation as a viable theory. Next experiment is of Pasteur's experiment. Louis Pasteur was a French scientist. He accepted the challenge to recreate the experiment and leave the system open to air. What he did? He subsequently designed several bottles with S-curved necks that were oriented downwards so gravity would prevent access by airborne foreign materials. He placed a nutrient-enriched broth in one of the goose-necked bottles, boiled the broth inside the bottle, and observed no life in the bottle for 1 year. When 1 year passed, he then broke off the top of the bottle, exposing it more directly into the air, and noted life forms in the broth within a days. He noted that as long as dust and other airborne particles were trapped in the S-shaped neck of the bottle, no life was created until this obstacle was removed. He reasoned that the contamination came from life forms in the air. Pasteur finally convinced a learned world that even if exposed to air, life did not arise from non-life. See, this nutrient broth is heated. 1 year passes. When there is a curved neck of bottle, no life is observed in the nutrient broth. It is free of microorganisms. When he broke the tube or neck, nutrient broth is teeming with microorganisms. This is the theory of biogenesis. Next is the cosmozoic theory. The another name of cosmozoic theory is of theory of panspermia. It was given by Richer, Helmholtz and Arrhenius. They suggested that life reached Earth from some extraterrestrial heavenly body in the form of microbes, sperms, seeds and spores. In short, the life in the form of resident spores called panspermia reached this Earth accidentally from other planets and developed into organisms. Next theory is of spontaneous generation. The theory that was given by some scientists and which was destroyed by Spellingeri's Reddy's experiment and by Pasteur's experiment. Next theory is of theory of spatial creation. This was proposed by Spanish monk, that is Father Soraj. The Spanish monk Father Soraj gives the theory of spatial creation. This theory assumes, as you can see in the picture, this theory assumes that life was created by some supernatural power beyond the analytic capacity of physics and chemistry. According to Christianity, the Bible states that the Creator formed all the living organisms within 6 natural days. First day is of materia prima. What is materia prima? It is a Latin term meaning primary matter or first source. First day is of materia prima. Plants formed on 3rd day. Fish and fowl formed on 5th day. And animals including man on 6th day. That according to Hindu mythology, Brahma created various forms of life as one stroke, and Manu and Shraddha were the first man and woman on the earth. So this is the theory of spatial creation. Next is early Earth. See, the primitive Earth of 4 billion years ago did not contain life. So if Pasture is correct and life only comes from existing life, so where and how did life begin? Based on many assumptions, the conditions on early Earth some 3 to 4 billion years ago are thought to be much different from what they are today. That's why we are calling it primitive Earth or early Earth. The early Earth is a mass of hot glowing atom. It is a mass of hot glowing atoms begin to solidify 4 billion years ago. As the lightest atoms cooled, hydrogen, methane, ammonia, carbon dioxide, nitrogen gas or gas were formed and water vapor condensed to fill the oceans. See, Big Bang theory is behind the formation of Earth. What is Big Bang? Big Bang is defined by a theory proposing that the Earth was one of the larger particles that coalesced after the initial universe explosion that spewed all the particles in the universe away from a central point and destined them to slowly revolve around that point. Consequently, the Earth was very hot, evaporating the liquid water into the atmosphere. However, as the Earth cooled, gravity trapped water vapor condensed, fell as rain and did not boil away but remained impounded in pools that became lakes and oceans. It was also believed that tectonic activity caused many volcanic eruptions at that time. From present day volcanoes, we know that when they erupt, they release carbon dioxide, nitrogen and a host of non-oxygen gases. In addition, with no protecting atmosphere, the Earth was constantly bombarded with meteorites and other space debris still in circulation from the Big Bang. From current astronomical research, we know that meteorites can carry ice and other compounds including carbon-based compounds. Researchers believe therefore that early Earth's atmosphere consisted of water vapor, carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, hydrogen, nitrogen, ammonia and methane. Note, no oxygen was present in early Earth's atmosphere. So, there was no free oxygen yet. In addition, severe lightning storms, volcanic eruption and ultraviolet irradiation added to the excitement. So, at this point, no evidence of life on Earth. See? Second point is, life definitely existed approximately 3.5 to 3.8 billion years ago. Darwin as well as other scientists were until recently unable to find evidence for life in the Precambrian period or era. You also heard the name of Darwin, who gave the theory of Darwinism. So Darwin and other scientists were until recently unable to find evidence for life in the Precambrian era. What is Precambrian era? Which includes the Proterozoic and Archean spanning about 2000 years each, that single-celled organisms like blue-green algae and bacteria first appeared. Towards the end of the Archean, the first multicellular soft-bodied animals began to emerge such as jellyfish, sepians and worms. So that's why they are calling it Precambrian era, that is older than approximately 700 million years ago. About 35 years ago, the reason became apparent. Before the Cambrian, there were only microscopic organisms, first prokaryotes and then eukaryotes, spanning over 3 billion years. That is microfossils. Prokaryotes are simple organisms surrounded by a membrane and cell wall, like bacteria. And eukaryotes are more complex multicellular organisms, for example plants, animals, fungi, and also many single-celled organisms like amoeba and yeast. The fossil record supports the idea that the first organisms were bacteria. Oldest fossil evidence is of stromatolites. The oldest microfossils discovered so far are that of cyanobacteria or blue-green algae that appeared around 3.5 billion years ago. The first eukaryotes or unicellular protists appeared about 1.5 billion years ago. That is Euglena, amoeba, like this. So, the origin of universe took place about 15 billion years ago by Big Bang of a dense entity. The origin of our solar system took place about 4.5 billion years ago when a gaseous cloud called solar nebula started to collapse under the force of its own gravity. Now there are some hypotheses that living things or living beings develop from non-living materials. First one is, in this hypothesis is chemical evolution or chemosynthetic theory. See, life developed from non-living materials eventually by the process of natural selection over hundreds of millions of years became able self-replicate and metabolize. This hypothesis presumes that at least 4 steps happen to bring about this chemical evolution. First one is the abiotic or non-living synthesis and accumulation of small organic monomers like amino acids or nucleotides. See, random molecules form single organic molecules with energy provided by the sun. Second point is the joining of monomers into polymers, or the simple organic molecules formed in the first stage bond to create major organic macromolecules. Next is the self-assembly of molecules into droplets that had chemical characteristics inside different from the environment outside. And next, the ability to replicate. C. The development of aggregates of molecules called coiservates. Coiservates are theorized to have been the early ancestors of cells. So, nucleic acid appear and help in the development of coiservates. There is an improvement in organization of the coiservates. It shows the beginning of evolutionary development. But the chemosynthetic theory is still basically impossible to conclude. So there are still some doubts. That is chemical evolution is a scientific hypothesis? Can it be tested? Do we have any scientific evidence that these processes can happen? Yes, to all of the above. But laboratory experiments cannot prove that life was created in this way on the primitive earth, only that the key steps could have happened. So, chemosynthetic theory or chemical evolution theory is also not satisfactory to explain the origin of life. Next comes Miller's experiment. Stanley Miller performed an experiment under support of operance theory of origin of life. He believed that basic compounds which are essential for life can be synthesized in the laboratory by creation in the laboratory on a small scale, the conditions which must have existed at the time of origin of life on earth. Miller performed this experiment with the collaboration of Urey. And what he did in his experiment? C. Miller took molecules which were believed to represent the major components of the early Earth's atmosphere and put them into a closed system. This is a system of Miller's experiment. The gases they used were methane, ammonia, hydrogen and water. Next, he ran a continuous electric current through the system to stimulate lightning storms believed to be common on the early Earth. Analysis of the experiment was done by chromatography. At the end of 1 week, Miller observed that as much as 10 to 15% of the carbon was now in the form of organic compounds. 2% of carbon had formed some of the amino acids which are used to make proteins. Perhaps most importantly, Miller's experiment showed that organic compounds such as amino acids which are essential to cellular life could be made easily under the conditions that scientists believed to be present on the early Earth. This enormous finding inspired a multitude of further experiments. What he did, he took all these gases in this jar and created electric current. And this is boiling water. Vapors produced in this boiling water and came in this jar. And here this is water condenser from where water vapor is converted into condensed droplets. And here the color of the water is changed, that is of red color. So the water containing organic compound. And here is the liquid water in the trap, which one can check. So Miller's experiment showed that organic compounds such as amino acids, which are essential to cellular life, could be made easily under the conditions that scientists believe to be present on the early Earth. So, some points came from Miller's experiments. First one is synthesized in the laboratory by creation in the laboratory. Amino acid and likewise molecules are synthesized in the laboratory by creation in the laboratory on a small scale. The conditions which must have existed at the time of origin of life on Earth. And next, an experiment to prove that organic compounds were the basis of life was performed by Miller. From the above theory, we conclude that life first originated in water. Therefore, water still continues to be an essential constituent of life. Like in the form of plasma, in the form of blood, every human being consists water in the form of plasma, in the form of blood. This proves that our ancestors are water animals or water human beings, or the origin of life is from ocean. So, the entire process of the origin of life was proposed by Oparin can be summarized as under the following heading. First step is formation of simple molecules. See, formation of simple molecules, the reactions between simple atoms like carbon, hydrogen, oxygen and nitrogen in the primitive atmosphere led to the formation of simple compounds like water, ammonia and methane. But since the earth was very hot, all these substances remained in the form of vapors in the atmosphere. Gradually, as the earth started cooling down, the dense clouds began raining on the earth, but the liquid was still very hot. Therefore, as the liquid water touched the earth's surface, it again got vaporized to be returned to the atmosphere. This process continued for millions of years. As a result of these heavy downpours, the earth's surface got filled with water to form rivers and oceans. Ammonia and methane got dissolved in the oceanic water. The mineral elements which were dissolved in rivers were also carried into the oceans when rivers joined it. The scientists have found that simple unicellular organisms resembling modern cyanobacteria were present on this earth about 3600 million years ago. It must be clear that the earth's atmosphere at that time was quite different from as it exists today. The earth's atmosphere at that time reducing, not oxidizing as it is today. The primitive atmosphere of earth had hydrogen, nitrogen, water vapors, carbon dioxide, methane and ammonia in abundance. Oxygen was not available in free state in sufficient quantities at that time. So, the primitive atmosphere of earth had hydrogen, nitrogen, water vapors, carbon dioxide, methane and ammonia in abundance. Next step is formation of simple organic compound. Methane is an active compound and it reacted with other compounds to form organic compounds like ethane, butane, propane, ethyl alcohol. From such organic compounds which were formed in the ocean and which played a role in the origin of life include sugars, glycerol and fatty acids, amino acids and pyrimidines and purines. See, continuous rains provided opportunities for different types of molecules to collide with each other and react. Methane is an active compound and it reacted with other compounds to form organic compounds like ethane, butane, propane, ethyl alcohol. From such organic compounds which were formed in the ocean, there is the origin of life include sugars, glycerol and fatty acid. These were formed by the combination of carbon, hydrogen and oxygen. Amino acids were formed by the combination of carbon, hydrogen, oxygen and nitrogen. And pyrimides and purines were formed by the combination of carbon, hydrogen and nitrogen. These all compounds are formed at the time when sunlight could not reach earth because of dense clouds in the sky. Next step is formation of complex organic compounds. The simple organic compounds combined in different ratios to form complex organic compounds like polysaccharides, fats and proteins. And these compounds are, number one is simple sugars combined in different ratios to form polysaccharides like starch, cellulose, glycogen, etc. Next is the reaction between glycerin and fatty acid yielded fats. And next, different types of combinations between a variety of amino acids yielded different types of proteins. Step 4 is formation of nucleic acids and nucleoproteins. See, some of the nucleoproteins develop the capability to synthesize molecules similar to themselves from organic and inorganic substance present in the ocean. In other words, the capability to reproduce had evolved. Next, step 5 is the organic evolution. In it, first step is formation of coacervates. Operin believed that the formation of proteins was a very important step in towards the origin of life. Due to their deuterionic nature, this enabled these colloidal structures to maintain their identity in spite of being surrounded by water molecules, forming a type of emulsion. And the coalescence of these colloidal structures led to the formation of structures called coacervates. Next is formation of primitive cell. It is believed that a primitive cell was formed when nucleic acids having the property of cell duplication entered the coacervates. Next, rearrangement of molecules occurred inside the coacervates surrounded by lipid molecules. And third step is origin of autotrophism. The autotrophic hypothesis on the origin of life asserts that the first living beings on earth were producers of their own food, just like plants and chemosynthetic microorganisms. And next step is origin of eukaryotic cells. What are eukaryotic cells? Eukaryotic cells are more complex multicellular organisms. For example, plants, animals, fungi, and many single-celled organisms like amoeba and yeast.